boring can I get now, no? After all that, right? The promise of belly dancing to all the men here, and somebody comes who's 50 plus and is going to talk about generative AI. Are we excited about it? I'm not. Like, I want him back. Right? I was enjoying myself. Awesome. So yeah, my deck is here. I think when ChatGPT came to the market, the first thing that everybody said was, this is the end of technology, people. How many of you agree with it? I don't see a single hand, and I'm very happy about it. Vineet was kind enough not to mention the amount of time that I spent in the industry. But the amount of time that I have spent in the industry, I've seen 3 cycles of such technology coming and hitting us, right? And every time people have said, this is really the end of jobs in India. So in 99, and I'm kind of telling you my age now, when the Y2K series was happening, the Infosys, the Wipros, the TCS of the world were really going full steam because we had to suddenly convert all the hard-coded dates in the software to, appeal to the 2000 series of dates that was coming in. And people said, after this, we have automated everything. Now, where is the need of people? We still continued. ATMs came. People said bank tellers will disappear. Bank tellers are still here. ATMs have generated more jobs for people. We have people who are servicing the ATMs, who are putting the cash in, doing the security, ensuring data privacy is maintained, all of those works, right? So technology will come. It will disrupt. There is absolutely no doubt about it that when new technology comes in, it will cause disruption. We will go through the cycle where people will say, OK, let's see what we can do with it. So we will innovate. And then we will transform the way we are working, the way we learn, and the way we evolve, right? And I don't think Gen AI, Open AI, whatever you want to call it, right, is any different. So having said that, when AI came into the picture about 3-4 decades back, and data science, people have done their PhDs, I know, 4 decades back in data science, but really when it became something that people started to talk about, we started talking about predictive models. We started talking about data warehouses, and everybody said Teradata is like the big thing in life. Then Green Plum arrived and stuff like that. And we started to collate data. We started to do mining of data, and we started to do predictive analysis around data. That by itself was so big. IoT came, we collected more data. We started to see how we can do things around data and stuff like that. So we went into machine learning. We said, we're collecting a lot of data at the edge, at the core, everywhere. Let's start to build models around it and see what we can get out of that. We built deep learning around it, okay? And we said, okay, now let's have better models. And suddenly we have foundational models. We have things around LLM and Gen AI and Open AI, which actually transform the way and generate endless possibilities that can define the way we work. The art and science of technology that can come together gives you possibilities that are immense. And we just have to wait to see what businesses do with it. I think all of you would have already seen this, but even from a FinTech perspective, the world that I come from, there are tremendous amount of use cases that we are seeing within our internal operations itself where we can use, and we are now trying to leverage the OpenAI concepts, right? Marketing and sales, better proposals, right? Personalized proposals. In my previous avatar, before joining Broadridge, I was at Dell. And when we would go to a customer, we would actually be wanting to check out what the customer's model is. We would spend weeks, sometimes months, designing a personalized architecture for the customer so that we could offer to the customer a very, very clear, concise solution to their problems, right? With the ChatGPT, Gen AI, OpenAI concepts that are coming in, that now becomes really simple because if you have and understand the problem statements, feed it in, you can really generate options, and then the intelligence of the human mind can come in and build and evolve those proposals. So you're shortening the time in which you can get proposals to your customers. You're making them far more intuitive, far more specific, and therefore increasing the chances of you making that deal happen. HR, I don't think anybody needs to understand that. We have already done a lot of chatbots in HR, but really changing that from a training perspective, from an L&D perspective, is something that OpenAI can be really leveraged in. Risk and legal, a lot of us, okay, are amalgamations of acquisitions. We are a legacy. We've got a lot of legacy contracts. And a lot of us, as organizations that have existed for decades together, really don't have the privilege of data that each contract has, right? What are the SLAs? What is it that we could do? What is it that we have signed up for each customer? With now the advent of OpenAI, really documenting all that, putting it together in a structured space, and therefore really understanding what your liabilities are, becomes that much more easier. Operations. I'm sure a lot of companies here, a lot of people here have knowledge operations, BPOs, managed services there. And OpenAI gives you the lever to kind of process documents, process operations, process transactions far more faster. And I've left product and software development at the very end, primarily because I believe that this is a space where we can leverage technology very well. I'm a firm believer of the lean way of working, of extreme programming, of pair programming. And with the advent of OpenAI, I believe that the pair programmer for every single person in the organization can be the OpenAI bots or whatever that technology that you are using in your organization. So from a use case perspective, I think there are a lot of use cases that we can have from a Gen AI perspective. But why? Why Gen AI in FinTech itself? Right? Broadridge, I don't think a lot of you would have heard too much about Broadridge, and Vineet was really struggling to pronounce the name properly. So, a lot of people that I meet with, when I say I work for Broadridge, oh, is it that Godrej? But no, Broadridge is a FinTech organization at a very broad level, base level. We develop products, platforms, and solutions for investor communication, for governance, for the capital market people, wealth market, and asset management. So those are our main business models. And if I have to simplify it, if you are in the US market, we don't play in the India market yet, but if you're in the US market and you hold a share, okay, or you have a mutual fund, or you have an insurance, or you have your PPF account, which is the 401k, right? That's the PPF account equivalent in the US. In most likelihood, you are going through a Broadridge system. We capture 95% of the US domestic market in that space, okay? And there are a lot of fintechs like us in different spaces. So typically, fintechs have tremendous amount of data that goes through their system, right? Now, when you have access to that kind of data, for example, in Broadridge, every day we process at least trillions of data transaction records in a day, right? So that kind of data, if you can sift out everything that is needed to be removed from a privacy perspective, from a customer preference perspective, still gives you immense amount of data to learn from. Manually, it's not possible. AI models, because again of the kind of data that you're talking about, actually, and the different types of data, right? Structured, unstructured data, struggle to do that. You have to build really complex models. And what we have seen from a traditional AI perspective, the resilience of that model is somewhere in the range of about 70 to 75%. Getting it to work to a 95% accuracy has been really difficult. But we believe that with the advent of the OpenAI technologies, we will be able to get to making these models far more successful. I have two use cases in the end. One is for our external customers and one for our internal customers, as how we are kind of leveraging this entire thing. I think the other use case is for customer delight, right? And when I say customers, I include both my customers and my customers' customers, because typically when you see a FinTech organization, it will always be a B2B kind of a area. And there, your customer will possibly be a B2C, could be a B2B or a B2C. So how do you create delight for your customer's customer? And that is immensely possible because you can now personalize stuff for a customer. I'll give you a simple example. I have broker-dealer contracts with most of the banks and the institutions in the world. Now, if I have the ability to say, I will do something different for customer X to customer Y, okay, and allow them to give that preference out to their own customers, I am starting to create a niche for my customers and therefore increasing their longevity with me. In the FinTech space, there's always a lot of regulation, right? Data privacy laws come in. India just released their data privacy law. The way you operate, the way you manage your, the banking transactions changes continuously. And you have to be up to date. And I'll give you a simple example. In India, if you are trading in securities, right? Securities settle in T+1, which means if you have placed an order today and you have bought something, you will have it in your account tomorrow. Or if you have sold something, it will go from your account tomorrow. In the US, it is T+2, which means the settlement cycle is 2 days. Now they're undergoing the transition of moving to T+1, which essentially means there's a high degree of automation that is needed because a lot of things were happening in a manual fashion. That will have to disappear if you have to suddenly crunch from 48 hours to 24 hours, okay? You will have to see how you will build that kind of resiliency into your systems, right? Now, all of that has to be done by a time frame. When governments announce regulatory compliances, they put a time frame to this. Making that happen, testing it out, rolling it out, and considering that we have so many institutions that we have to talk to, we would have to do testing with each one of them. How does one manage that? That timeline gets crunched tremendously with the advent of this kind of a technology. And the last one I already spoke about, which is the entire thing around CRM, where you can personalize messages to your target audience, right? All of us have to do it, whether we are a FinTech in the B2B space or we are a B2C kind of an organization. These are some use cases which people in the space that we are in, right? In the space of investor communications, in the space of capital markets, etc., where organizations have kind of gone ahead and leveraged this technology to build certain use cases, right? 4 big spaces that we have. One is content creation. Content creation is what do you want to put into the social media? How do you want to personalize information and feeds to your customers? How do you want to generate leads? How do you want to do your marketing? All of that comes under content creation. The other big area is really knowledge management, right? And when we talk about knowledge management, it is both internal and external, which means I could have an internal chat GPT kind of an area, and that can be leveraged to onboard people faster, to deliver training faster, to deliver personalized, limited edition modules of training, right? So that's something that a lot of organizations are doing for their internal associates. Analytics of data and an advice around that, okay? Our customers, right? If you talk about a Morgan Stanley, you talk about a Citibank, you talk about a Barclays, they would want to provide very personalized information to their customers. I'm sure there are several people in the audience here that talk to a wealth advisor, and you would be very unhappy if your wealth advisor is giving you an advice that is similar to the advisor they're giving to the person next to you, right? That's not personalized. And most banks today, at least in India, deliver that, and I don't believe that things will be very different in the US. But if there was an ability to the associate at the bank to come and say, hey, Sheenam, this is your risk profile. You don't like to take too much risk, and therefore these are the 5 things that I think you should invest in. But hey, listen, you have a better appetite for risk, and therefore you should be investing in something like this, and is able to siphon out data and make that happen. That's what is the capability that we can get out. And I will talk a little bit more in terms of the use case that we have on this particular subject a little later. The other one is your assistants, right? I'm sure most of us in our organization today have some form of a chatbot for HR, a chatbot for our customers for support, right? And we have, over time, built AI predictive models and deep learning into those chatbots. But imagine now the power that you have, because you have all the information in the intranet, okay? And you have your own internal information. If you marry all of that through the power of this technology, how beautiful support can get for your customers. I'll give you a very simple example, right? Each one of us goes into Google and has access to information, ratings in various sites. We have to go to those various sites to get the ratings out for a product that we want to do, for a resort that we want to go and have a vacation in, or any other thing that we want to indulge in. Imagine if you can get it in one place. That's the power of support that you can have. I'm going to shift my basis into what are the first principles from a Broadridge perspective. We're a very deep FinTech organization, which means I have access to tremendous amount of data for my customers, right? 95% of the equity transactions in the US domestic markets flow through a Broadridge system, which means that I have to be very, very clear about what is the kind of security I've got, what is the kind of data privacy I want to build into my systems, and the fact that that data cannot be available in open internet. So really ensuring that when I leverage this technology, I am not sending out the data that I have externally. When I am leveraging this technology, the fields, the PI data that needs to be masked, gets masked and encrypted before it kind of even enters into the models for processing in this technology. So really that is the first principle in which we operate, right? And that's why it took us about 9 months to first leverage this technology and bring it out. Even then, we are kind of the market leaders in that space. um, we are looking at how we can leverage generative AI in the development space. So I talked earlier about pair programming. Pair programming will definitely be one of the use cases that we will do as to how you could be a driver and ChatGPT can be the observer, or you could reverse it and tell ChatGPT to generate the code and you could review it. The other thing that we want to do, leveraging this kind of a technology, is really deriving test cases. Doing test-driven development has been proven as one of the fastest and cleanest ways of developing code. And therefore, if you can leverage ChatGPT or generative AI or whatever is the tool that you would be building and calling in your area to start generating test cases for the use cases that you want to generate and then develop to pass them, that's going to be a huge win from a productivity perspective and reducing the time to market of your code to your customers, right? So that's another area that we want to leverage this technology from a first principles business. We believe, very strongly believe, that going forward, there cannot be any product in the fintech space at least, and that's where we come, that's where we have the expertise and we know the place, without any kind of an AI solution. So whether you're talking classic traditional AI, you're talking about deep learning models, or you're talking about leveraging generative AI, it will have to have some component of AI in the product. So we are looking at how every single product manager today in the system is going to embed AI into the product platforms that we are building or have already built. So one of the goals that we have for the next 3 years, and we build 3-year goals and publish it to our investors, that cycle is happening right now, is embedding AI into every single thing that we do. And the last one we want to do in the next 18 months is launch 5 products for our customers, right? We have about 16 to 18 use cases that we have already identified. One of them is already live. About 3 of them are in very advanced stages of development, and it's across the space. So it's across investor communications, but it is very high in spaces where you're touching end customers directly. So capital markets will be one of them. Wealth will be another one of them. Asset management will be very critical. So really seeing how we can move this technology into both the front office, the middle office, and the back office, targeting primarily the front and the middle office for the business that we are in. So that's really our first principles. I'm going to move on here and talk about 2 products that we have kind of already built and released. Bond GPT is a product that we have released in the space of fixed income. When we talk about fixed income, it's generally a space where there are instruments which we give out to our customers to offer to their customers for fixed income, right? Fixed income instruments at a very basic level is an FD, right? You know what is the return that you will get from it. So when you say fixed income, that's what it means. Now, if you have ever invested in a mutual fund in India, you will know that there are at least 50,000 mutual funds that exist today. We have about 10 to 12 big houses that offer mutual funds, and they have mutual funds in the space of liquid, in the space of debit, balanced, equity, sector funds, high risk funds, whatever you call it, right? And your ability or the ability of a wealth advisor to choose and recommend a fund from that large scale of 50,000 funds is going to be really difficult, right? If somebody has to tell you, okay, go out and buy these 20 scripts because there are 10,000 companies in the world, in India, you can say, okay, these are really the top scripts and I want them in my portfolio, easy to do. Okay, still difficult, but easy to do from an AI perspective. But if you're talking about 50,000 options, how do you remember that there are 50,000 options in a manual space? And how do you crunch that data to say, okay, for your kind of profile, for your kind of investment, this is what you want to do. On a similar scale, in the US, there are close to 300,000 bond instruments that are available. Bonds are nothing but, again, fixed instruments which allow people to earn a little bit more than the FDs, and they are locked in funds for a particular period of time. So let's assume you're 30 years old, you've just had a baby, and you believe that you will need money to come in after 10 years, right? And then after 15 years and after 20 years to plan certain milestones in your life, right? Now, if you want for your risk profile to understand what is it, which instrument you should invest in from a perspective that is expiring or giving you money back in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, and is best, depending on your profile, depending on the sector that you want to invest in, it's going to be very difficult. Bond GPT makes life easier for you. This particular tool or this particular interface marries data that we have and marries data that the market has together to build in answers to your questions. We don't give recommendations. So this is not a tool that will give you recommendations to say, this is what you should do. But if you ask Bond GPT, which are the bonds, let's assume, that are expiring in 2020, 2030, and which will yield money in 2035, and then you get a series of answers. And then you ask Bond GPT the next question, so tell me which are the bonds in the automotive space. It will learn from the first question that you asked and give you a list of bonds in the automotive space that are going to yield in 2030 and 2035. So it kind of builds on that. It also leverages the principles of saying how you can protect your data. It leverages the principles of saying how you can remove the biases from the data. And it ensures that it does not provide any kind of advice or any kind of recommendations. It's a pure play content output depending on the kind of questions that you have asked the platform. And this has just gone live about 3 months back, and customers have started using it, customers have started leveraging it, and it's starting to gain traction. We did about 3 deals in the last 3 months, and it's starting to make noise. It's the first of its kind from this space perspective, so Broadridge is kind of leading the space here. Very good tool from a knowledge retrieval perspective, fast content retrieval perspective. The next use case that I want to talk about is what we did for our internal associates. So we created, on the lines of ChatGPT, BroadGPT, simple, Broadridge, BroadGPT, that's why we call it that. This is our intranet version of the ChatGPT. So it takes all the data that is available in the intranet, plus data that we have, okay, internally, and sees how they can be married and provided information. So the way I use it, right? I'm new to this space. I have spent 2 years in this organization, still learning the space, still learning the domain. So any information that I want on a particular thing, for example, if I want to understand a little bit more about what are the intricacies of the front office. I can ask Broad GPT those questions and get out answers. I can also get information about who's using what kind of solution. So it helps us, A, have knowledge available to us. It helps us in onboarding. It helps us with customer data, okay, and a comparison of who's using what, when did they last buy from us, okay, what are the other solutions that, sorry, what are the other solutions that customers are investing in, what is our competition trying to do, which are the startups that are trying to, kind of come into the space and disrupt our own space. What advantages do we have over the startups? So all of that information is suddenly now available very, very easily. The other thing that this is going to help us do, and it has been programmed to do, is to kind of start helping us with developer productivity. So it's already a tool that our R&D teams, our product development and engineering teams are using as pair programming, are leveraging for testing. Our aspiration for BroadGPT in the next phase is to actually see how it can help our operations teams. We run a large revenue stream where we actually do a lot of work for our customers who have invested in our platforms and are kind of working with us. So how does one get to that stage is something that we want to work with developing this. BroadGPT took us about 9 months to make, or developed, fully conceptualized, developed, and now supported all of it from India for the whole globe. So that's what I had for you guys today. Open to any questions.
Companies, we are doing B2B business, right? How much importance it is to understand the business of our opponent and how we are grappling ourselves to go out there and use these AI tools. Because this is like very fast technology has been grown up, right?
Yep.
Very few, very niche peoples are available in the market who have not even touched upon this fintech business. So it is like the guy who was there in aerospace, you guys hire him, and then now the first thing is how to give him a boost of the domain so that he understands, he gets a good career and he gets good output for you.
Absolutely. So I touched upon this from an onboarding perspective, right? Today when I onboard somebody, because my domain is so vast and really complex from that perspective, right? It takes us anywhere from 9 months to 12 months to really make the person productive. So for them to really be something that I can put in front of a customer and say, yeah, now you are good enough to talk to a customer, takes us about a year. Now that associate can be based in India, that associate can be based in Dublin, that associate can be based in US. The answer to that question is, it's going to take us 9 months to 12 months. Now, with the advent of this, because now we have all the knowledge, we have access to all our university data, right? Broadridge University's data. We have access to, industry data. We believe that can now be crunched to about 6 months. So we are not saying 3 months, we are not saying tomorrow. We want to see how we can bring that 12-month period down to 6 months in the first tranche. So since this is also something that we just launched last month, it's in an experiment stage. Right? So do I have an answer with data for you? The answer is no. But we strongly believe that that's something that we can do. Yeah, thank you. Yes,
hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I had a question. So with regards to the regulatory compliance and data privacy, what are the hiccups that you might have faced till now and you have solved? And what are the hiccups that are still ongoing and you feel like, it's a major problem and needs to be solved?
Great question. So in the space that we are in, there are 2 things that we have to think about, right? One is that if there is a regulation which is coming out, Is it in a timeline that is practical? Is it in a timeline that's feasible? What are the changes that need to do? What are the changes that I need to do? What are the changes that my customer needs to do? And how we get it together. Now, this entire thing about T+2 to the T+1 transition, right? I have to make the changes in my platform for my customers. But my customers have to do a lot of business process re-engineering to ensure that they can, from their own process perspective, be able to do this in 24 hours less. So there has to be a partnership there. So that readiness is one aspect, right? The physical platform, the business process re-engineering, the testing portion, all of that is one bit. The second more important bit is the regulatory body comes up with something, right? But as such an important player, because 95% of the transactions go through it, we have the ability to go and negotiate with the compliance bodies. We have the ability to go and talk to the regulatory bodies. So we spend our leaders, right, spend a lot of time with the government officials, with NYSE officials, to really sit down and say what should be the regulations coming. So we are not just absorbing the regulations, we are also a part of the team that defines the regulations, that defines the timelines. We also do a lot of negotiations if they want to make some changes in terms of the way products and solutions could be written. So we are a big influence factor from that perspective. Going to the data and privacy set, I don't think there you have too much options, right? The government really decides that, and it's outside of FinTech. Those laws apply across to the industry, and all of us are technology companies, whether we are in automotive, retail, hospitality, in healthcare, we all have to adhere to that. So we really don't have too much say to that. So it's really what is it that is coming and hitting us, and how do we want to approach it? There are different ways in which we manage that, right? And different processes in the mind, therefore.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, great presentation. So my question is in line with what you talked about, what the gentleman talked about in terms of data privacy. And I'm working in this space. I'm in HP. So first of all, you have a big inventory of these technology solutions.
Yep.
And of course, you are building new technologies as you move forward, technology, applications, products, etc. One major challenge is what would I do about the existing solutions? I mean, anyways, I am going to, for a company like HP, probably it's $1 billion expense. Either you upgrade it so that you are aligning with the policies, or you just scrap it and build new ones. So if you can double down on the data and privacy policy, how you people are approaching it?
So I think it would be, the approach to that would be, what is the size of data that you're dealing with, right? Now, if I look at my company today, or if I go back to any of my previous organizations, right, whether it was SAP or Infosys or Dell, there is humongous amount of data that already exists in whichever data warehouse that you've got, right? Whether it's Teradata or Greenplum, or you're migrating to the cloud from a data perspective. There is no way you will be able to change that data, which essentially means you have to build onto the legacy. Now, there are two ways to do that. One is, how dependent are you? Let's assume you're using Snowflake or you're using Greenplum. How dependent are you on the components that they provide for that kind of technology, and can you therefore leverage it and depend on that? But if you have, like most large organizations, and I'm sure it's no different for HP, build your own customized solutions on data on top of it, you will have to change it, right? I think where Gen AI can help is do a reverse tech doc from your code perspective and tell you where you have to make changes. But I don't think there is an option to just scrap what you have at that point of time. And it won't just be $1 million even to upgrade, right? It'll be much more. You're talking about a multi-year journey. You're talking about multi-million-dollar kind of journey. But I don't think there is any organization that can say, I want to scrap what I have, unless it's like a 6-month-old organization. That would be my 2 cents.
Hi, ma'am. Good
Hi.
morning. Thanks for the presentation. I have one question about Broad GPT.
Yes.
Where you are explaining about the pair programming using AI or
Yeah.
the bot-based kind
Yeah.
of thing. Maybe because I am in the development space, so I have worked on pair programming extensively.
Okay.
Maybe if you could shed some more light on
Yeah.
what kind of technical assistance, and then you were talking about the unit test cases or the quality engineering part, right?
Yeah.
I'll be more thankful.
So pair programming is essentially, for people who don't understand pair programming, there are 2 people who code together. Okay, and there are 2 roles. One is the driver role, and one is the observer role. So the driver role is a person who writes the code. The observer is the one who is providing the critique to that and saying, why did you do this? Why did you not do this, right? And pair programming, 2 people together, when you start off, your productivity is about 0.6 instead of 2, right? And by the time you end, right, by the time you have completed about 6, 7, 8 months in the process, your productivity can go to 4 to 4.5, 5 times. Now, with this kind of a technology, because this helps you write code against a storyline, okay, you can do this as your primary driver, and you become the observer, you become the critique, because you have the knowledge about what the domain is, you know what the customer wants, and you have not just the science information, you also bring in the art information into software. You can then therefore be the critique. But the fact is that somebody has written code for you in tremendously low amount of time, and that's where pre-programming can be used. The other place that this technology can be leveraged is to write test cases. Unit test cases, even simple integration test cases is something that we have leveraged this technology to deliver. Very complex multi-system integration test cases, not yet, but I'm sure over the next few months or maybe 2 years, this technology will learn that too, because it learns, it's built in a way that it learns on its own and learns very fast. Does that help you? Thank you.
Hi, good morning, ma'am.
Hi.
Fascinating talk. So I really love that 5 principles which you laid out. So I think it's really inspiration for product managers like myself. So question is on your pair programming and test cases, right? Should we be doing this as sort of customer-facing people, or it should be coming from, let's say, IT vendors? So I think obviously you have taken the lead. You seem to be quite...
Should we be doing it, or who else should be doing it?
Your IT vendors, or who is your IT partner teams?
We do our own development.
Okay.
So at least from a Broadridge perspective, my dependence on a third party to develop code is very limited. So because our domain is so intensive, right? So it will be us only, for us at least.
Okay, so you have taken that full ownership and
yeah.
hit the mark. Okay.
I mean, our vendor base from a people labor perspective is less than 5%. That's
Okay.
our approach.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. Maybe on a lighter note, maybe you should also consider the social media influencers, right? I think they do a lot of havoc. I think maybe ChatGPT can be a better advisor than what some of the crazy advice people are getting.
It is data in, data out. So if you have junk that it's going to read, it's going to throw out junk. And that's why people will still be needed always, right? It'll give you data, but who will validate whether it's right, it is relevant, and it is the right thing to do? Has to be us.
Shall we call it an end to questions?
I am absolutely fine. You decide. You are the boss.
I'm not the boss, madam. But Sheenam Ohrie on stage, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your hands together for
Thank
her.
you.
Thank you so much for starting day one
Thank
on
you.
a fantastic note. Means a lot to us. Thank you very much. And it is time for us to quickly jump into a few announcements. How many of you were not here when Cyrus got on stage? Put your hands up in the air. Not here? See, this is what happens if you show up late for day 3, all right? It was super entertaining. Our man just jumped up on stage while I was making my announcements in the morning, and I had to stop. But I have no complaints whatsoever because I was entertained quite enthusiastically. All right, we have a stand-up happening by Ravi Gupta on this very stage later in the day, and the man himself, the OG of comedy, Cyrus Brocha, will be taking stage for the AIQ quiz. Make sure you register for that and make sure you are here for when that happens. Check your itinerary for more information, and I will be making announcements just in case timings change. Also, Voices Unleashed, the Cypher Mic Hour, a unique platform for sharing stories, insights, and innovative ideas where whether you're a veteran or a newcomer, it does not